Alright, what's going on everyone? Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade the 2021 Mono Green Stompy Challenger deck on a budget. We will try not to exceed $30 USD with our upgrades, and if that currency isn't relevant to you, we're basically trying to spend no more than the deck's retail price with our upgrades, so it should give you a rough idea of what we're spending. However much you spent on the deck should be about what we're spending for our upgrades. So, the Mono Green Stompy deck is all about big, giant creatures, and likewise, the deck has some big, giant problems. Namely, it's missing key cards like Questing Beast, Elder Gargaroth, and the ever-important Great Henge. Not only is the deck missing these cards, but adding them is rather difficult considering how expensive they are. The Great Henge in particular clocks in at over $40 per copy, so just one single copy is over our budget, and the deck typically plays 3 to 4. It often plays like 3 in the main board and 1 in the sideboard, so that's just a little bit expensive, and it's very important for the deck. If you can untap with the Great Henge, often you will just win the game. That's how powerful it is, but we can't quite afford it. Also, a lot of Mono Green Stompy decks are running Vorinclex nowadays. This is also significantly out of our budget, so that's a bummer. Fortunately, even though the deck is missing so many powerful cards, we could still make some pretty significant improvements to the deck with our budget. So let's get started and we'll see where we end up at the end of this thing. So first off, we'll take out 3 Wildwood Trackers for 3 Tangled Florahedrons. This can be played as a land if necessary, but also allows us to ramp, which is naturally a good thing when we're a deck filled with big green creatures. The Trackers, on the other hand, they just aren't really played that much. I mean, back with Guilds of Ravnica, this card saw a little bit of play in some mono green lists, but not typical and definitely not relevant now. So it can go. We'll take out the 4th Wildwood Tracker for an extra Stone Quill Serpent. Admittedly, these are somewhat obnoxious at about $3 each, but it is a very powerful card in this deck since it can be played as a 1/1 to make Lovestruck Beast active, and it can be mutated on top of with Gem Razor to make a massive creature with the +1/+1 counters, and it's definitely better than the Tracker regardless. Next, we'll take out the 3 Thrashing Brontodons for 3 Old Growth Trolls. The Brontodons aren't bad, but we already have Gem Razors for artifact and enchantment control. We also have some of that in the sideboard as well, so the Old Growth Trolls are just better for the main board. Not only are they 4/4s for 3 mana, but when they die, they can enchant a land and make it produce more mana. It starts producing 2 mana instead of 1. And if you have excess lands, you can crack them for another 4/4. So this gives us some card advantage in green, which would normally, we would get that from the Great Henge. Unfortunately, that's out of our budget, but this gives us, a way to generate card advantage in green, and also gives us a 3 mana 4/4. So it allows us to be stompy and aggressive, but also gives us that, just that extra creature. Next, we'll take out Sir Farron for an extra Gem Razor. Sir Farron isn't great in this deck since it usually just dies in combat, and Gem Razor is great, especially in this version of the deck that likes to dish out +1/+1 counters. Gem Razor really loves to mutate on top of stuff with +1/+1 counters, so very good in this deck. We're also going to take out the other Sir Farron for a second copy of Garruk Unleashed. However, if you happen to have a Vivian, or if you don't mind spending a few extra dollars for it, I actually think Vivian is a better choice here. I'm going to officially count Garruk as my upgrade because I think Garruk is just fine and he's cheaper, but I also think that Vivian is great here. You won't have to worry about running the same Planeswalker and drawing 2 of them. Vivian works really well in this deck. It's just a great card, definitely recommended, but Garruk also works. I mean, Garruk isn't going to live, every single game, so having a second copy is fine. You can just hold it until the first one dies, but either of these better than the Sir Farron. So next, we're going to take out 2 Wildborn Preservers for 2 Scavenging Uses, although I would consider this a low priority change. I do think it's a great one. Scavenging Ooze can often take over the game by itself. It gains life against aggro decks, and it gives you a main board answer to graveyard decks like Kroxa and Lurrus, right? So I'm a huge fan, though I'm considering it a low priority change as not all decks run this many copies. Most competitive decks that you see run 2 to 3 Scavenging Ooze, so going up to 4, I don't think it's like absolutely 100% necessary, but it's a great card, and you can get them for pretty cheap now, so definitely recommended. I also want to take out a Ram Through for a 4th Kazandu Mammoth. So Ram Through is great, but this deck is packing 7 of these effects. It has 4 Ram Throughs and 3 Primal Mites. It also has 2 more in the sideboard, and I just feel like this is way too many. We do not need this many copies of this effect. So the Mammoth is great. It doubles as a land if we need it. If we have no lands in hand, we can play it as a land, that's fine. It's also a 3 mana 3/3 that could sometimes be a 3 mana 5/5. So just better than this like excess Ram Through because we have too many. And for the same reason, I want to cut another Ram Through for a 4th Old Growth Troll. This deck has a ton of lands now just because, you know, we added the Florahedron, we added the extra Mammoth, and both of these double as lands. And while you can play those as creatures, you may run into a situation where your opening hand doesn't have a ton of lands, so you play those as lands, but then you have like a higher rate of lands in your deck, so you get flooded in the late game. And the great thing about Old Growth Troll is it kind of helps with flood, because if you draw too many lands, you just start sacrificing them for creatures, sort of. If the Old Growth Troll dies, then you can enchant a land and then sacrifice it for a troll. So it could just ease that that mana flood situation, in addition to just being a 3 mana 4/4. So that's pretty useful. We can also make a couple changes to the sideboard. We can take out 2 Run Afouls for 2 Kogla. Run Afoul isn't very reliable because you can't pick what dies. I don't really like it that much. And Kogla can fight anything, even things with flying. So if you want to get rid of a specific flyer, Kogla can do that. It's also just another big massive threat. And also, it can blow up artifacts and enchantments, so I like this a lot better in the sideboard than the Run Afoul, which is never going to guarantee that you hit the thing that you want to kill. Though it is useful specifically against the blue-white control deck if they only have Dream Trawler. That's basically, I think, why this is in the sideboard. I think they put this in the sideboard specifically because they're expecting people to play these decks against each other, and you could bring Run Afoul in against the Azorius control deck to hopefully kill their Dream Trawler if that's the only creature they have. So I suppose if you're playing against that deck a lot and Dream Trawler is giving you problems, then you can keep Run Afoul in, but I think generally Kogla is going to be better if you're not specifically having problems with that specific card. I also think we could take out 2 Colony Ambush for 2 Garruk's Harbingers. I have no clue why these ambushes are on the sideboard. It's so weird. A fight card in the sideboard, why? Especially since it has so many Ram Throughs and Primal Mites already. It just seems like a waste of a sideboard slot. So we bring in the Harbinger. It has hexproof from black, so it's great against decks with lots of black removal. Rogues, for example. Anything that's just killing all your creatures with black removal spells, Harbinger's great, and it also will generate card advantage, giving you extra cards when it deals damage, so pretty decent. And that's actually it for our upgrades. You can technically add Castle Garenbrig. You can add like 1 or 2 if you want. I don't think it's critical. It is good. Like, it's a free, basically free ramp spell, sort of. So it's reasonable. It's very good. The only reason I'm not recommending them is they're $5 to $6 each, and at that price, I don't think it's 100% necessary. But if you happen to have them, or if you want to spend $5 on them, you could buy like 1 or 2, put them in the place of forests, and they're absolutely fine. Also, if you do want to add the more expensive cards, maybe you open them in a booster or whatever, very briefly, you can replace the Primal Mites with the Great Henge, because it's absolutely amazing. You will win games when you draw Great Henge. Primal Mite's great, but if you have a big enough creature for that to matter, Great Henge will probably just win you the game. You can remove the 2 or 3 Old Growth Trolls for 2 to 3 Questing Beast, or rather, just don't buy the Old Growth Troll and put the Questing Beast in instead. And I think you could take out a Ram Through or 2 for an Elder Gargaroth or a Vorinclex if you want. If you have a Vorinclex, you can take out a Ram Through for a Vorinclex, that's fine. Same thing with Elder Gargaroth. Obviously, these are all way too expensive for our budget, so I'm not officially counting these as upgrades in our official upgrade guide. But if you happen to open any of them, if you happen to own any of them, you can put those in the slots I just mentioned, and they're very good. And that's the deck, guys. It is disappointing that so many key pieces were missing from the original deck, and it's also disappointing that they're too expensive for our budget, but we were still able to, in my opinion, massively power this thing up. Our finished deck here is definitely more capable of winning games. We just have more power. We have more card advantage. I think our sideboard is a little bit better. So overall, I think this is a massive improvement. And with the upgrades we made, it actually wasn't that expensive. So you can get a lot more power out of this for not a ton of money. So not bad. It's not bad. Just, I really wish these had questing beasts or great henge, something of that sort. But yeah, guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hopefully that was helpful. And I will see you in the next one.